Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is going to be titled The Misuse of the Word Narcissist. We are in a mental health crisis, and instead of leaning into compassion, depth, and real clinical understanding, we've opted for catchphrases. Narcissist has become the ultimate emotional shortcut. Don't like what someone did? Don't understand why they behave the way they do? Slap that label on them and move on. It's self-righteous. It's shallow, and it's doing real damage to our interpersonal intelligence. I have sat in rooms with real narcissists, people who meet the criteria, who genuinely lack empathy, who manipulate with precision, who hide their deep shame behind layers of charm, anger, or arrogance. That's not someone who brags a little or posts gym selfies. That's not your ex who had poor communication skills. And that's certainly not your boss who gave you honest feedback. But that's what people are calling narcissism now. What's really happening is people are projecting their own unresolved pain onto others and then using a clinical term to validate it. It's easier to call someone a narcissist than it is to say, that person hurt me and I don't understand why. We're avoiding the hard emotional labor of healing by outsourcing blame to a diagnosis we don't fully understand. There's a disturbing irony here. In trying to call out narcissism, we've actually started embodying it. We center ourselves in every narrative. We assume the worst in others. We dismiss nuance. We demand validation. We broadcast our grievances for attention and moral superiority. That's not awareness. That's narcissistic behavior disguised as justice. Let me be clear, NPD is a personality disorder. That means it's rigid, pervasive, long-standing. It's not situational, it's not temporary. It doesn't show up just because someone was rude or selfish one day. It's baked into the fabric of a person's psyche. If you're calling every unpleasant person a narcissist, you're not describing them. You're revealing your own discomfort with complexity. And here's the real kicker. The overuse of this term is eroding empathy across the board. When everything is abuse, nothing is. When everyone's a narcissist, no one is. We've created this binary where you're either a victim or a monster. That's not psychology, that's a cartoon. And we're raising a generation to think that's real life. We're also poisoning relationships. I've watched people walk away from marriages, friendships, even family ties, not because they were dealing with a true narcissist, but because a therapist with weak boundaries or a social media expert told them their partner's discomfort with vulnerability was pathological. That's malpractice. It's trauma porn dressed up as insight. Social media algorithms don't care about accuracy. They care about clicks, outrage, confirmation bias. So if you're feeling wounded and someone tells you your ex is a narcissist, boom, you feel seen. But you're not healing. You're looping. You're stuck in your pain. And now you've got a label that lets you stay there indefinitely. Meanwhile, real narcissistic abuse survivors are getting drowned out. They're the ones who lived in gaslit hellscapes for years, who were devalued, discarded, broken down systematically. Their voices are now lost in the noise of every person who thinks he didn't open up to me means he's a narcissist. That's offensive, that's invalidating, and it needs to stop. We need to grow up emotionally. That means learning to say things like, this relationship wasn't right for me, without needing a diagnosis to justify it. That means owning your part in dysfunctional dynamics instead of painting the other person as a clinical case study. It means understanding that hurt does not always equal harm. If someone disagrees with you, challenges you, or prioritizes themselves in a way you don't like, that's not narcissism. That's life. That's autonomy. And sometimes it's even healthy. But we're so addicted to moral clarity, we pathologize anything that threatens our emotional comfort. That's immaturity. It's ego in disguise. We've turned narcissist into the adult version of calling someone a bully on the playground. It's what we say when we feel slighted, invalidated, or exposed. And because it sounds clinical, it gives our feelings legitimacy without having to examine them critically. That's a problem. Because not every unpleasant emotion is a trauma, not every relationship rupture is abuse, and not every confident person is a narcissist. We're at a point now where having needs, expressing opinions, or having emotional boundaries gets labeled toxic or narcissistic. So what happens? People start shrinking, they start hiding, they question their own sanity, and in doing that, we're creating a culture of fear. Fear of expression, fear of emotion, fear of being labeled. And I hate to break it to you, but self-diagnosing your ex as a narcissist doesn't make you more healed. It just makes you more entrenched in a narrative that may not even be true. You don't need a diagnosis to move on. You need grief. You need acceptance. And maybe, just maybe, you need to let go of your own ego enough to say, it just didn't work. This obsession with labeling is costing us the very thing we claim to want, connection. You cannot connect with others if your first instinct is to pathologize them. You cannot grow if you won't tolerate discomfort. And you cannot love if you are constantly scanning for pathology. We've taken a word that should be used with extreme care and turned it into an emotional bludgeon. It's irresponsible, it's cruel, and it's not helping anyone. So let's reclaim the word narcissist for what it actually means, and stop using it as a lazy shortcut for our own unresolved hurt. You want healing? Start with compassion, real compassion, not blind forgiveness, not toxic positivity, compassion with boundaries, compassion with accountability. But most of all, compassion rooted in truth, not pop psychology garbage that flattens every person into a diagnosis. We're better than this. We have to be. Or we're just creating the very narcissistic culture we claim to be fighting against. People tend to have their own internal definitions of words regardless of what the words actually mean. Even if you explain what narcissist really is, they often won't accept it. They're attached to the meaning they've already given it. Once someone internalizes a definition, it's hard to get them to let it go and accept the correct one. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Signing out. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye for now.